Hello, welcome to Access Paranormal, and tonight it's me and James Anthony.
Hello, Jamie Williams. How
Got
are
your
you?
full name there, didn't I?
You did.
I'm
How are you
alright.
doing?
Tonight we're having a ghostly chat, James.
We are having a ghostly chat, aren't we? Yeah.
It's like a couple of weeks back, we done one before, didn't we?
We
said
did.
we'd come back and do it again.
We did, and we got distracted, didn't we, with everything else going on?
Life.
Stuff.
Life,
Life
wasn't
got
Well,
in the way.
James, I've got to tell you this, right? Last week, I was in Mill Street Barracks,
All right.
and the actual show went out late. There was an issue with the station, and it didn't start until 9:30. So
Right.
I thought it hadn't gone out until I spoke to Neil, and Neil said, "Oh no, Jamie, it went out at 9:30 because when I went into the studio, Windows decided to do an update right in the middle of the shows.
Oh no.
So he said it shut down and went up, and he said
it always does it at the most inconvenient time, doesn't it?
So anyway, I thought while I was in Mill Street and there was a group in and that, I thought I'll do my radio show while I'm here, which was the one from last week.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I thought, I'll just do call outs and things like that and have a little natter to myself, and and I heard something hit the floor, and I can't explain it. I turned the light on, couldn't see it, a bit in the air there. Couldn't see it at all. So I thought, maybe I've knocked something off. At the time you think, what was that? Couldn't work anything out. I hadn't knocked anything off because when I finished the show I had to look around thinking, well, maybe there was something on the arm and I've knocked it and it's fell down the side and things like that. Couldn't find anything, so I still can't explain that one. And then there was like a, like rustling on like a paper, like a polythene bag or something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't work that out, and I even stood up and looked around and couldn't work it out at all. It was after the end of the show again, I thought, probably a mouse, probably a mouse has got something like that, because you know how big the building is.
Yeah.
So I assumed it was a mouse what done that, it wasn't anything paranormal.
Yeah.
But I'm coming up to what was incredible, was footsteps.
Oh, you can hear them.
You know in the main hall,
Yeah.
well, they call it the main deck, don't they? In the main deck, I could hear them walking.
Wow.
And I thought, so it might be the group.
But we've heard that before, haven't we? We've been in there on our own and we've heard footsteps in walking.
Yeah.
And there's only been me and you in the building before. Which is it is, it's creepy, isn't it, when that happens? I was we're in my house now, aren't we, having a chat? And I was sat in here the other night, and I think if anyone, when we've been on before, we said this is a really old house, and we're sat in the lounge, and I was just sat here watching the television, I can't remember what it was now, and I could hear, and I heard like a tapping noise, just like that, and I thought, now my heating when it comes on, there is a tapping noise that comes from that, because when I first moved in, I thought, crikey, what's that noise? But it is the heater goes up like that, it's very, very gentle. It's because it's the pipes. It's a new heating system. The pipes are made out of plastic, and they make a slight noise when they come on. But this wasn't. It was on the wall, and I thought that's weird. And then I heard a noise outside, and it kind of sounded like a, which was very, very strange. I thought, now this is a bit odd. And it wasn't like dark or anything. It was made, it was made about 7 o'clock, so it was still quite light out and stuff. And I actually started filming on before. Now I didn't get anything on before, but I thought I'm going to film. But obviously, as you know, we've had experiences in here before of things, and But it's not scary. It doesn't scare me at all. I've never been scared. It's a nice, as you know, it's a nice.
It's a lovely atmosphere,
But it was really, really interesting, and it was almost like. Sometimes it's just a reminder that we're there,
Yeah.
And it was really weird because, as I say, I always sit where I am now, and it was like that on the wall, like a tap, tap, tap. Now there isn't any. There's no. I know that's a solid wall. There's no pipes or anything behind there. There's no radiators on that wall. So I genuinely don't know what, the logical explanation it could be. And as I said, then I heard a noise outside in the hallway. So it was a bit strange actually.
But isn't it funny that when you hear them in your own house? I mean, I've heard things in our house, and some people say to me, "You do ghost hunts, Jamie. You could be taking things back to your house."
Yeah, see, I don't think you do.
No, I don't. I think
you
if
do.
they're going to be there, they're going to be there.
I think if they're going to be there, they're going to be there. But
Yeah.
I also think as well, like your house, I always view your house as a very protected thing.
Environment,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the thing that the thing that's in here, from what people have told me, is very, and it's certainly I've never felt negative. I went to the toilet one night, and when you go across the landing, when you go, you go up the stairs, you got the first thing, another set of stairs, and I did for a split second see what looked like a figure stood by the top of the stairs. Now, when I've had people around here who are sensitive and stuff, they've said the same thing about there being a man at the top of the stairs. But everyone said, oh, he's really, really nice. He's just somebody who used to live here and pops in now and again. And I've got to say, the feeling there is never threatening. It's quite nice, reassuring, actually, you know. So all I can assume is it's somebody who used to live here many years ago.
Just having a nose.
Who's probably just popping back in, you know.
Mm.
But the thing, sometimes when I sit in this room, I do think to myself that, you know, there was people in this room when Queen Victoria was on the throne in the First World War.
Does she use your toilet?
It's not that old. Queen Victoria was on the throne in the First World War, in the Second World War, in the 50s. All these great things that we talk about, these life events, people have sat in this, and obviously this would have been the kind of the, I don't know what they would call it really. They're not so much the parlour, but you know the posh room, wasn't it originally? You know, with the coving and everything like that. You know, so but it's interesting. But I do think sometimes it's if you look at a lot of ghost sightings. Most people have ever, you know, if you read stories about people who live in houses or castles and things and they've seen a ghost, generally a lot of them are not when they're doing a paranormal investigation. It's normally when they're just going about the day, isn't it? And they'll see something and think, oh, crikey, look at that. You know, it's not, I mean, the famous picture, a legend picture of a ghost, the Brown Lady of Rainham Hall, which is the very famous one of the figure of the woman on the stairs. I think that was taken at a photo shoot for Country Life magazine or something like that. So again, they weren't doing photographs for ghosts, they were just doing pictures of the building and that appeared. Now whether it's genuine or not, who knows, but you know, it's a very old photograph, isn't it?
There's the other famous picture as well of the child in the fire.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one before,
But it's funny because you talk about these things and how many people have walked past a ghost and not known.
Well, exactly, yeah.
You know,
because you always assume that they're going
to
be... Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I remember coming home from a ghost hunt a couple of years back, a few years back now, and we were driving back, and it was in Highton, and we were going down Wilson Road.
You've told me about this before, where it was in the car with you?
And sorry?
Is this the one where it was in the car with you?
No.
Right.
This was like, I was dropping somebody off, and we seen somebody cross the road, a figure, with what looked like a rucksack on.
Yeah.
And he disappeared. I went, where did they go to like that? And I said, I'm curious about this. And I don't know why. I said, I know where that, because I know like the back of my hand.
You do, yeah.
So it was near St Agnes's Church.
Yeah.
And it looked like they cut through the car park. So if you go to the next road and turn right,
you'll see them coming out.
You'll see them coming out. Yeah. There's no other way they could go.
Do you not think they could have just sat down or something? Or?
No.
Right.
Because we even looked down the car park and where they've gone.
It's weird, isn't it?
So that happened, right? Never thought anything. It was only when I spoke to my son one day, Ian, I went, Ian, I said, something strange happened to me. I know you're not going to believe me and all this lot. So I told him the same thing. And he went, Dad, he said, can I just tell you something? I said, yeah. He said, one day, he said, I was coming down the road.
Yeah.
He said, there was a person walking in front of me. And he said, and he turned into, there's like a brick. It's like an old Victorian doorway.
Right.
In a wall.
Yeah.
And it's all been bricked up or stone, whatever it was. And it says fair something on the top of it.
Yeah.
And he said it went that way. And he said, I don't know where it disappeared to or anything.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And I said, well, what did it look like? He said, it said the person looked like he had some kind of rucksack on his back.
Yeah.
Now that's the same thing as I think it's the same thing. I can't be 100% sure. So I saw on the wall. Well, Ian's very skeptic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to convince him of anything, and he's not a believer in the ghosts and that. And but he's seen that as well.
It is very weird, isn't it? But there's nothing to say that couldn't be a some form of apparition or whatever, that just because it doesn't look like it's from 100 years ago, you know.
Just doing
I mean, it could be from the 60s, couldn't it? You know, because it's the attire and everything. It would sometimes with, you know, certain old-fashioned clothes that you might think from the 50s that people wear now because they're in style, you know.
We're saying rucksacks. It might not have been a rucksack. It might have been.
It could have been a work like a labourer with some kind of carry thing on or something. You just, you know, you really don't know, do you? But I do think there's definitely kind of, you know, it's interesting, and I think a friend of mine was asking me, well, why do you always do ghost hunts at night? And I said, well, I think the reason being is because it's generally, I think it's darker, it's quieter, so you're more likely to see light anomalies or lights and things. But it's also quieter as well.
There's no distraction.
There's no distraction, so that's why. I mean, you could do one in the daytime.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Oh, excuse me, keep going. You could
Am I keeping you up?
No, you could do one in the daytime.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, and I suppose you might get some results. But equally, I think the night time is better because I think your natural senses are heightened then as well, aren't they? You know, so you're more kind of aware of things, and you. But that can also be against you, can't it? Because you then can see things that aren't there. But no, but this is very, very interesting. I think you are. I think you keep me up. Jamie, keep going.
Try that again.
It's because I'm sat down and relaxed. I think the other thing is as well that I think is very interesting, and this kind of came to me literally I think about 2 days ago, and I was looking online at a kind of web page thing, and there's people on there who are posting pictures of what caught this on my such and such thing and this and that, and without being disrespectful, some of them you look at and you think, I can't see anything at all, or what I can see is, you know, it looks like the picture's been taken on a 2008 mobile phone, it's that pixelated. Or it's just something where there's a pattern in something and it's, you know, pareidolia. Yeah. And people are posting them. Yeah. And that's one thing that I do think is, you know, I haven't taken the picture, and, you know, so I can't say I wasn't there. But equally, I find it kind of, and then they were getting quite grumpy because people were saying, well, it's probably this or it could be that. And I think, why would you, or, you know, when people have put pictures on, and you know that they're fake pictures, you know, you can see from them they've manipulated the image or it's been photoshopped something, and they post it and then get upset when people don't think it's real. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder why people do that. I wonder what is the reason that they would do it. Because at the end of the day, attention. For me, it must be just for attention, mustn't it? Because for me, I wouldn't do it because it's a complete waste of time.
And my belly rumble, you're yawning, my belly's rumbling. It's a great show, this one, isn't it? We're doing our own bounce down. But I don't get it myself. And sometimes I think, are they doing it for the attention?
Well, they could
or
be.
Are they doing it as
like a prank or something? Or
yeah, let's see how many people can see something. And I mean, it'd be interesting to fake a picture, put it on there,
and see how many
and
people.
See what the reactions are, and then say to them, "This picture was fake. I faked it. This is how easy you can be."
Kind of manipulated, absolutely, no, you're right.
And but sometimes, you know, I mean, that's the negative side of it. Sometimes I think people do see things.
Oh, I definitely, in
they
images.
believe they see it, so they put it up.
Well, this is exactly what I'm saying, and there's some of them on there, and I can look at them and say, I can absolutely see why you might think that this is strange. And some people will say, what do you think about it? And we'll listen, and when people say, well, it could be this, they'll say, oh, right, that's great, because they're just curious to know what the actual answer is to it. Whereas there's other people who do get quite, you know, combative, shall we say, when people will challenge them on it. You know, and some of them are just so beyond, you really can't.
You can make it through this show.
I will make it through the show. But some of them are so far beyond that you really can't kind of, you look at it, you think, it's like me taking a picture of that photograph on the wall there, and then saying, oh, there's a face in it. There isn't. It's just a picture. But if you take it in a certain way, on a low quality lens, or you know, and it's dark. I mean, one of the other ones that was on there the other day, somebody had posted one and they'd said that there was, is this a spirit behind? But actually, what it was is, and somebody had commented and said, it wasn't. It was a long exposure at night. Yeah. So the person had moved behind the picture. So obviously the light, they basically left a trail of light. So it did look quite
realistic,
quite creepy actually. Yeah. But if you don't know anything about photography, then you're going to look at that and you're going to think to yourself, "Crikey! Oh my God, look at this!" If you don't know how that works. So, you know, people have commented and then they were like, yeah, no, that's fine, we know what the answer is now. But I do think, I mean, it's like when we've been on investigations before, and, we've done nights with people, stuff like that, and we've had people who, you've had people who are making noises and protect, all the really...
Doing it on purpose.
Doing it on purpose. But equally, we also get people who... They will kind of say they're sensing everything or this or that. And now you know that we always say, we know particularly with someone like Mill Street, we know the stories very well. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things about that is that sometimes people, and we're not going to say what it is in case anyone's listening actually, but sometimes people will go in there and will come up with things which they assume is part of the building.
Yeah. Because
it's maybe in certain, public places, but actually we know that it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find that very interesting because we have had people who've come in before and they've spoken about things that we've experienced together which nobody else knows about in there, and they've come in and they've experienced.
And that's interesting.
Yeah,
But there's a name, I've seen it quite a few times in there, and it's clearly there, the name is there. I'm not going to say where it is or anything. And a few times people have said, I'm getting this, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Who's never, ever been in the building.
No, they've never been in the building.
Been in the building. He's here.
Well, the information about them is in a prominent location.
Yeah.
But they were never connected with that building, which is very interesting. But again, I think you've got to ask the question, is that somebody going there and reading that and then knowingly saying it, or have they come in, looked at it because they're just interested, and then sat down and forgotten, and then when they're in the when they're in the energies and the atmosphere of the night, that then pops into their mind, and then they then think that that's come from a kind of spiritual side. Do you know what I mean? So it's not a deliberate thing. We don't know that because we're not them.
No. Well, have you ever read something and you just read it and then later on you think, where's that name come from in my head?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it happens all the
time. Where's that name?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're watching TV, a name will come, even though you're not...
Yeah.
You might be watching
into your mind, won't it?
Yeah, and... there's a lot about Mill Street out there.
Oh, there's loads, absolutely.
And if you read something and you just glimpse it and you go there, you might not think, but it's already in your head.
But it's already in your mind.
Power of suggestion.
Power of suggestion. Yeah. The analogy I always use for people when we talk about it is, if I lived in a big kind of gothic mansion.
Yeah.
And I said to you on a stormy winter's night, Jamie, I'm going away for the night, could you come and look after the house? And you said,
no.
yeah. Well, yeah. And you said, yeah, of course I will. And you arrived and I said to you, and you said, is it haunted? And I said, no, it isn't. I said, I've lived here for a long time, there's never been anything, it's a lovely atmosphere, You might sleep a little bit uneasy because you're not used, it's somewhere different, but you'd be fine. Now, if you turn up on the stormy winter's night and said, oh God, it's a bit creepy, is it haunted? And I said, well, it is actually. There's the ghost of a monk that was, killed in the Reformation that lives, and apparently on a stormy winter's night he's heard clattering up and down the stairs and things. Well, that would be completely different then, because if your bedroom was at the top of that stairs, as soon as you got into bed, the wind, the noise, everything, you would be thinking about that. and your whole perception of that would be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's very interesting, I think, I love going to somewhere by the first time when I go and not really knowing anything about it, because I think it's much more exciting, because what you're doing then is purely kind of getting what you're getting, information and stuff that or activity that you're finding yourself, rather than having somebody come and tell you all about it first. So that is already in your mind. Now that's us, because we do it a lot. But obviously, if you're going on a if you've not done it before, or you go into a public event, then actually that's an experience. So it's important that you do get that information, because actually if you just said, there's a room, go in there, that would be really boring for people, and they're paying for something to have an enjoyable time and stuff, So there's nothing wrong with finding that information, but me personally, I quite enjoy going into somewhere and actually kind of, just seeing for the first time, and then finding out whether anything's right,
But I done one a while back, I thought, and we were talking about the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
And I was saying, people can put things in your mind and all that lot. And I told them beforehand, and then he said, where's the toilet? And I said, you going in the toilet, are you? And he went, yeah. So I said, it's there, but that's known for the person who hung themselves in there. And I told them, and I gave them this story about he went in there and he found them hanging, and every now and then you'll hear it. He's hitting the wall like that, tapping against the wall like that.
Is that your stuff?
Yeah. And he went, right, like that. I said, he'd be alright, just leave the lights on and that. But when they came out, they were convinced they'd heard this tapping.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
And I said, where? And he said, where you said about the wall and that.
Yeah.
I said, alright. I said, what I told you was fake. And I said, remember earlier on when we were talking about power of suggestion? I said, and I said, I warned you, and then I've done it to you. You've gone in there, you've learned me story about the person who hung and it was tapping against the wall. I said, the tapping is the pipes.
Yeah. But just show you though, doesn't it?
I said, he's turned the heating off.
Yeah.
And I said, so what he's done is he turned the heating off, and I knew that the pipes were going to make a noise, so I've told you this story. You've gone in there, you've heard the pipes, thinking that was it, and it's scared you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I said, that's how easy it is. But when we go upstairs, I know nothing about this building.
Yeah.
Apart from the person who said, I'm just turning the heating off, Jamie, because, we need to turn them off now. And I said, so I knew there was pipes in there, because I went to the gents.
Yeah.
And I said, so I seen the pipes, so I thought, are they going to make a noise? And they did. Because you know what it's like.
No, I just heard the tapping then.
What's my stomach?
It wasn't your stomach. I just heard bum bum.
No, I didn't hear it.
Just behind you over there. It must have come out on the audio that, because it was bum bum bum.
Oh, I'll listen to that.
Ask out, see if you get anything.
Ask out now, are you sure?
Yeah,
it's your house.
Yeah. Oh, it's my house, I'm not bothered, it's fine.
Okay, if there's anybody here, if that was you tapping, can you do it again, please? Can you make it tap? That bump was from next door.
No, it wasn't, I heard it over there.
Did you?
Try it again.
Can you tap again, please? If that was you making that noise again, if you're trying to get our attention, could you do the tapping again, please? Because I can hear that.
Yeah, you can hear that.
Chatting away, yeah. But it shows you though, James, that you can put things in people's minds before they even start.
Oh.
My stomach again. Have you noticed when we go on paranormal investigations?
I remember when we went to an investigation and somebody asked the spirit to talk through your stomach. Yeah. It's like, oh God.
I remember that.
Remember when talk through his stomach?
And I said, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Do you remember him? Because I turned around and said, oh, my belly's just rumbling. He said, that's the spirit making
spirit. So I nearly felt like saying to him, it isn't, because if it is, he must have the most spirit connections ever, because it happens all the time.
I must have a complete vortex in my stomach.
Oh, honestly, yeah, maybe that's where they're coming in and out, yeah.
Well, I remember being with the vet field and that, at Mill Street.
Yeah.
And we were in this room, and he'd never been there before.
Yeah.
And it was like the most haunted, it was the most haunted experience.
Oh, yeah.
and we were standing in the cellar, and I'd just eaten something, you know, we'd have a little bit of break, just eating something.
Oh, your stomach didn't go
And
off,
she was
did it?
standing next to me like that, and my stomach went, "Rrrr," like that. Well, she nearly dropped dead on the spot. And she went, "What the was that?" I said, "Sorry, but it was my stomach." And she went, "Oh my God," she said. Yeah, so it's even got onto like most towards the event.
It is scary though sometimes. It does sound like a growl though, doesn't it?
I've had loads of people jump on my stomach.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
It's because you're always eating.
What do you mean?
You know, it's funny though, isn't it? Because you talk about like paranormal sounds and stuff like that, and so I've heard tapping and knocking and footsteps and things like that. But I think one of the weirdest ones I've heard and we've talked about this loads on the show, was when we heard the footsteps at Sherdley Gardens.
Yeah.
And we heard them coming towards us because it was so clear.
We actually captured the audio.
We did, didn't we? Yeah, it was so clear. And that's one of them things where, like, you know, and I've told other people about this, and they go, well, it must have been this and that. I was like, I know you're saying this, and actually, if it was me on the opposite side, I would say exactly the same thing. But we both heard them coming, and if you look at somebody walking up the street towards you, you can hear the feet. Yeah. It was exactly like that, except there was no person there. Yeah. So that was really, really. But what I also thought was really interesting when we went there last time, relatively recently, I could, and I don't know whether I didn't listen to it back, but I know you will have done. I could see something moving there to the point of where it frightened me at one point because I saw it move. But you didn't see it at all?
No, I don't see things like that. Yeah,
but I did, and that is something that I've kind of seen.
That's when we
were in the middle bit.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and it made me jump.
We were walking out, you've done it again, I was going, I can't see that.
It made me jump.
It's quite good this.
Now, I've got one for you.
Go on.
Right. So, we obviously, we do all the kind of paranormal things and everything like that. And we've been doing this. Now, I was thinking about this because before we started recording this, we went outside in the garden and we were just sat talking. And we was looking up at the sky. It's a really lovely clear night, isn't it? The moon's out and you can see all the stars. But one thing I was thinking about is, right, if you think about spirits and you think about how infinitely small the Earth is in the vastness of the universe, you can't even comprehend how big it is.
You can't imagine the end.
Like, wonder whether ghosts can travel to just somewhere else in the universe instantly. I was thinking about this because I thought, you know what, if I die and I'm like a spirit, God, I'd love to do that.
But don't you think? Let's go to the astral projection.
Well, the astral projection. You know I'm interested. You know I'm very interested in that as well.
So if I know someone who says they've been around the universe, and I think to myself, it's I can't comprehend it because I've not done it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So you can't comprehend it.
Well,
the world's full of mysteries.
Well, you know what? I as you know, I'm really into the astral projection things. And I have had it a couple of times before where I've gone when you it's such, and the thing about me is I wouldn't say that I necessarily, I'm still very sceptical about it, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it is my spirit leaving my body. It could all be in my mind. But what's very interesting about it is when you do these techniques, something definitely happens because you can feel yourself float. And I've felt myself float up. I've seen myself look down and seen myself lay down. But I've had it a few times where I've gone straight up and into what looks like almost like a starscape. But the interesting thing about it is it's so vivid, like really, really vibrant colours and swirls and stars. It's like it's amazing actually. But as I say, now whether that's me actually going off into some kind of astral plane or it's just my mind, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's dead interesting because you're completely consciously aware of it.
I remember you saying about that.
Yeah, it's really like
if you're not astral projection, it doesn't matter because it's giving you that.
It's such an amazing feeling. Yeah. That whether you're astral projecting or not, it doesn't really matter because it may. And this is the thing I think about, well-being and everything really. so many people get so much enjoyment out of doing paranormal investigations, right? They make friends from it, they spend time, it gets people out of the house, it keeps them busy, it helps with mental well-being, and isolation and everything in a lot of ways. So whether or not there's anything to it or there isn't, actually the positive benefits it has for people. Now I'm not talking about, I think sometimes people can maybe get too
deep into it
in the sense that it can, if it has a negative effect on your life, I think that's not good. The same as if anything has a negative effect on your life. But I think if you get a positive out of it, I think it's a great thing to do, because...
I do. I think we've talked about this in the mental health while we're on that subject.
Yeah.
And we've met people with mental health, and I've been through it.
Well, everyone has. I think most people have.
And I still, even like I've had a tough 12 months, a really tough 12 months, and I've had to pull away from a few things just to go back into my well-being, really. Stress and God knows what else. And the thing that kept me going and the thing that I really enjoyed doing was this radio show, because I can be me.
Yeah, and you can. But I also think there's a really interesting thing about it. If you're doing an investigation, and let's say you're in a haunted room somewhere, all of your focus is on what is happening at that precise moment. You're looking at the room, you're listening, you're trying to feel the if you work that way, feel the energies and stuff. So you're really, really focused on exactly what's happening at that particular time. Now, one of the key things that one of the things I learned from young Steve, who with Access Paranormal, who's trained in meditation and everything, is what actually happens. Because your mind may be so clouded with thoughts and anxiety and not thinking about all the problems of life. What actually happens is when you're doing that investigation, you're not thinking of any of that because you're focused just on the moment. And actually, that for a well-being thing is amazing because it actually allows you to switch off a bit.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I don't do very many paranormal things now, apart from if I go out with you. But one of my big things is, I love mountain biking and going out on my bike and cycling and stuff. But one of the reasons I love doing it is when I go out, I don't take my phone with me. I do, but I won't have it out. I'll have it, off in my bag. And I love that sense of just focusing on exactly what's happening right now, because you can't not, because otherwise you'll crash. Just focusing immediately on what's happening. You're out in nature, out in the.
There's nothing better.
And it's an amazing thing. But I think the paranormal, when you're doing or any form of things, if you're doing tarot cards or you're going to see a medium or a show or something like that, I think that actually has a massive impact on people's well-being, and that is really valuable, that, isn't it?
Yeah, and people say, I've had people say, with people with mental health, and I say, well, everybody's got in some way, even if it's a small amount or a large amount.
Oh, absolutely, in different ways. I think you're right.
How can you do the paranormal with mental health? I said, well, my attitude there is as well, you do other things with mental health.
Well, I think it depends on the thing is when if you say that mental health, it's not like there's so many different
aspects of it,
aspects and experiences that people have that you couldn't possibly narrow it down to. Well, you've got mental health issues or whatever. You shouldn't do that because actually it might not affect. That might be a helpful thing to you. It's useful. Something else might not be.
Who are we to judge what people do to help
exactly.
themselves?
And this is it. If somebody finds something that helps them, then great. I mean, we've met so many interesting people over the years doing this from all different backgrounds, who come into it, and we've met people who have got boxes and crates full of gadgets that they have everywhere. And then there's people who are more like us and we'd rather not use stuff like that and just I'd rather, we've done it before, I know we use little cat balls and things, but other than that really, we don't use anything. But that's just us, but other people enjoy doing their thing. And actually though, but people enjoy it, and that's the most important thing. And I think if
That's
you're not
it.
enjoying it, I think it's not good, because I also think as well, if you're trying to get activity, if you're not friends with your group, or you got, you know, if you've not got friends there, and you're not kind of, you've not got positivity, I actually think you get less stuff happening as well.
Sometimes I think people go in with an attitude that nothing's going to happen tonight, and it won't. If you've got that way of thinking, nah, it's not going to happen tonight, and if it does, it's probably fake, you're not going to get nothing from it. You've got to go with an open mind and think, do you know what? I don't believe in it, but let's see what happens anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, the thing is though, isn't it? I mean, I've often thought this, because I think there's... I've done investigations before, you've been with me on them, where there's people who are very, very closed-minded. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not being sceptical about things, and I absolutely think it's a good idea to, if something happens, to maybe, could it be this, could it be that?
You've got to.
And I think you've got to do that, because you've got to kind of be objective about it, because a lot of times there is a perfectly natural explanation. But I think sometimes if people are very closed-minded about stuff and closed off, I also think that can have a bit of a negative effect on it as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I get what you're saying.
because the reason I say this is because I think if I was a spirit and I go in there and there's somebody who's like, I'm not listening, you know, it's the same as I would be in life. If I came in and said, oh well, somebody, I'm not listening to you, I don't want to speak to you, then you're just going to go, all right, well, fair enough, then I'm not.
Yeah.
So I think actually the trick is to be questioning but be open-minded to stuff, because you have it where, don't you, where there can be so many different ways that you'll experience something, or, you know, it going cold, breezes and drafts, or it going hot, smells is another one.
Yeah,
you know.
smells, yeah.
Really interesting actually, Jamie. Somebody was saying to me the other day that they that when they've got the granddad round them, they get a smell of a certain kind of like aftershave smell, right? And they said, it's funny because I can smell it, but nobody else can. Now I've got a certain thing with my great gran when she's around, and I do believe she is, and I've seen a very, very, very good medium quite a number of years ago who told me all about, told lots of very specific information and everything. But when she comes around, there's a certain smell, and it's like that she had like a perfume that she used to wear on. Yeah. Now, whenever I smell that, I go, and I've smelt it in the house, I've smelt it in the car. I obviously don't, I don't wear a perfume.
Yeah,
I was going to say, she's been dead 20 years, so I definitely don't like. But but the thing is that, and I've smelt it before, but other people have been there and they've not smelt it, and I was really curious about it, because I was reading about it online, and I read a theory, and I thought, I've lost the webpage now. I can't remember where it was, but so the theory was, if you think about it, right. So if I say to you, smell bacon. Right, you can't smell bacon, but you know what it smells like, don't you, in your mind, because we do have a very good sense of smell. Well, most people do. Now, what this theory said is that basically, the reason that you get a certain smell is because when that person's energy comes into you, it triggers that smell to give you a clue that they're there. Oh, nice. So you smell that scent of them because you strongly associate that particular smell with them. So their energy's coming into your kind of auric field.
Picking it up.
Will actually make you smell that, but it's just the memory of it more than that, which is why other people might not smell anything. So a really good one I get is it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we've been at Mill Street before, if we've had something negative around, did you hear it?
I did.
Yeah.
That would have been picked up as well.
Yeah, that was bum, 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 bum. So we have.
Cheer.
I don't think it was, that, because that's a creek that went bum 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 bum.
Let me try. That's the tap.
That was the chair there, yeah.
Yeah. So what we thought was tapping them was my chair.
It did sound like the churn. Yeah, it did sound like the tapping, didn't it?
Yeah.
But we've been out before, and we've had something negative come round, and we've got like an awful smell.
Yeah.
And we've had that in military, we've had it in
Yeah.
other places. Now that for me, I think is something that when that energy comes near to us, that goes bump like that, and we go, oh, there's an awful smell, it must be something bad. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I do think that there's definitely something in that. But I thought, what an interesting theory that is, because you basically kind of it is that energy that's making you smell it, rather than you actually it being a sense in the air.
Well, what about voices? When somebody says something to you,
Like a spirit voice.
yeah, and you can hear it. An example was when I went back to Mill Street and we heard, "Hello, Jamie."
Yeah.
Not like that loud. It was just like, "Hello, Jamie."
Yeah.
That. And I went, and I was convinced one of the others had said it to me. And the two were in the hall,
Yeah.
and my son Ian was in the
Yeah.
in the wardroom.
But the thing is like, it's the same way. Maybe it's the same thing as if I said to you, think of Jingle Bells, you can hear it playing in your head, can't you?
Do you know what baffles me? You were talking about smell before,
Yeah.
and you say, "Taste, can you smell bacon?"
Yeah.
And you can smell it, but
Yeah.
it's in your head.
It's in your head.
You
Yeah.
think, how does your head get you to smell the bacon?
Yeah. But you have an association with that particular sense, because so this is what I'm saying. So maybe that energy there that you heard, almost like clairaudience, whereas if you've got a medium who's clairaudient, so they can hear spirit speaking to them.
Yeah.
Allegedly, if you if a medium says they're clairaudient, they can hear spirits. Well, if you're stood next to them, you can't hear the spirit. It's only them who can hear it. So maybe it's a similar thing in the sense of that energy's coming and you've heard it say that, and nobody else has. It could be, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but
Well, the other night I was in a place called Pod Cafe.
oh right, yes indeed.
Roy
Roy
and Claire
that's
were running.
yeah.
They said, "Come down," so I went down and done that, and Claire ended up doing an interview with me.
Yeah.
And we were talking about different things like this, and how can you explain it? The paranormal way, and she was saying, well, how did you feel? How did it feel when you heard your name? Somebody saying Claire.
Yeah.
And I was going, well, it's just like somebody talking to you, but from another world. I sometimes think, and we were talking about this last night, we hadn't even started recording them, we were talking about the different levels of spirits. And I said, well, it's probably, and he said, why do you think that they contact us? What makes you think they can talk to us? And I said, years ago, probably the same now, if you had a speaker in your house or something, walkie-talkies now,
Yeah.
taxis can come through.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you remember it in the house. Taxis come through on the speakers sometimes because they hit the same frequency or the same wavelength. And I said, and sometimes we live with wavelengths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, light is, isn't it?
Yeah. What we.
There's a whole. The thing is, there's a whole spectrum of light around us now that we can't see because our eyes don't.
Yeah.
If you go with an infrared camera, that it can be pitch black, but the infrared camera can see everything because it's picking up that. There's infrared in this room, but we can't see it because our eyes don't pick that up.
But if you think of it like that, and our frequencies, well, like the radio waves, sometimes they'll cross over. Telephones, remember years ago, telephone exchange used to get called the party line.
Yeah.
So basically, the party line now is us crossing over with the paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The ghostly line, whatever you want to call it, the power line, whatever. Yeah. It's there, and sometimes I think we hit that wavelength because we don't know what wavelength they're on.
Well, they say vibrational levels, don't they, and stuff,
And how many times have you sat there in your ears going,
Yeah.
It's got to be a wavelength from somewhere because you can hear that sound.
You can hear that sound going. Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because you almost think to yourself sometimes, like I've thought before. You know, the other night when it was very, very strange. Got into bed, and I always like having a read before I go to bed. Gets into bed, and I shut my eyes to go to sleep, and all I could see in my vision was different faces appearing, all sorts of faces. Like in this, like I was saying this area, the listeners don't know what I'm doing. I'm circling before it, but I could see faces appearing, not that I recognised, and they'd transform into something else. And I was almost consciously observing it, thinking, "Oh, this is weird." And then, and I hadn't done the astral projection meditation, but then I started feeling the feeling of, it feels like you're being pulled, almost like you're being pulled out the bed. Now, at first, when I first started doing it, I used to jolt myself out of it because I'd be like, oh, you know, whereas I let myself go. Now, next minute, I'm on the floor, in the room, not in that kind of state. Very, very strange. But the thing I do is I write stuff down when I get up. When I wake up, I'll write stuff down just because sometimes when you go to sleep again, you forget about it.
Yeah, you do.
And it is really, really, it's great to be analytical about these things.
Yeah.
And I also think as well, you know, a lot of people have said, well, you know what, science is saying this or that. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, because science is, you know, that's science, chemistry in action. But science is just, you know, amazing, isn't it? Mind-blowingly amazing. But equally, you know, I think just because the problem is with science, it has to rely on evidence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It has to rely on theories and evidence. And I think the problem is that things like the paranormal are always going to have, is that when you almost feel like you're getting somewhere with it, it changes again.
Yeah.
And you can't quantify it in any way, shape or form. And I think if that's how you're looking at things, it's such a difficult thing to do, because you can't, you know, something that you can't, isn't tangibly there.
Yeah.
It's only your perception that could potentially do it. Well, science can't get involved in that, can it? Because there's no evidence for it.
Here's a question then, James. We're on Earth in a universe. We can't imagine how big the universe is.
Well, trillions and trillions of galaxies.
And we've got ghosts, or what we say are ghosts or spirits, or whatever you want to call them. If there's another planet out there with life on it, will they have the same?
Well, it could do.
They must.
But then there's you know, there's so many theories that people will say about. I mean, there was one. Me and a friend of mine were debating this, and we were saying, if you think about it, right, the universe is, you know, apparently infinite, isn't it? or from what we know of, I'm not mega.
But even if you come to the end of the universe, there's got to be something beyond it.
Well, they say they're saying it's expanding. So basically, as fast as you're reaching the edge of it, it's going further away. But it got me thinking about the reverse, right? So if you, let's say you take my fingernail, right, and you zoom into it. Let's say you've got an unlimited telescope that can zoom in. And it zooms in and zooms in and zooms in. It goes down to all the really, you know, particles, subatomic particles, everything like that. And it keeps going and 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 keeps going. Then actually, where does it end up? Because it's still infinite, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's nothing.
Because so you might end up in a complete void, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it
can
keep going, and that is the type of thing where when you think about things like the universe and stuff, and the size of it, you can't comprehend. I mean, there's a really great thing out there that you've probably seen it before, and it's a little tiny snapshot of the sky, zoomed in, and it's full of galaxies.
Yeah.
And you think about, you know, them galaxies are, you know, trillions and trillions of light years away. We're seeing them, you know, that you know, trillions of years ago, because of the time it takes for the light to travel to us. And there's even stuff, and you know, people, you know, there's some that are that far away that light will never reach us because it's the distance is so far. that for me is just mesmerising.
Yeah.
You know, that scale of it.
And you say the light what we see from the stars is
Yeah.
probably billions of years old.
Well, absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing them billions of years ago because so technically, you know, the thing is very interesting. People talk about things like time travel,
Yeah.
and you know, the interesting thing is that if you went, let's say you had a really great, you know, super infinite telescope, and you could travel faster than the speed of light, which I believe is technically impossible, but if you could, and let's say you travelled out into space with your super duper telescope and went faster than the speed of light to what would then be 1912 on Earth, pop your telescopes to the middle of the North Atlantic, you'd see the Titanic sinking. Because that light that's been emitted from is still going off there in space somewhere at some point, you know. Everything, me walking out the house this morning, it's been a really clear day. If somebody was looking from a distance, they're going to see that at some point. Yeah, but if that planet was, you know, 1 million light years away, and they had a super duper telescope in that time, when they looked here, they'd see me walking out of the house. But you know, I don't think I would still be walking out of the house in 1 million years. You know, so that is. Yeah. And all of that, I find it absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, it's like, have you seen these pictures that come up sometimes on your phone and they zoom in?
Oh yeah, and they zoom in.
You see an eye,
yeah,
and you look in the eye and there's a person sitting down at the table. You zoom in on the table, there's a plant pot, you zoom in on the plant pot, there's two people fishing.
Yeah.
You zoom in a bit more and it goes on and on and on and on and on. You think, the phenomenal way they make them pictures.
Yeah.
But that's life.
Yeah.
That's how life is. There's no end. Because people say to me, oh, you know, the past. Yeah, you can't go back to your past.
No.
You can only go. Everything
it's
in life is going forward.
Yeah,
nothing goes backwards.
Yeah.
And people talk to me about past life. They say, no, you know, do you reckon you can go back past? Can you go back in time? And I'm thinking, you can't because time keeps moving.
You know, it's interesting about past lives. It's not something I'm particularly well up on, and I've always been a bit kind of, you know, I've always been interested in it. I should read more about it really, but you know, I think it's interesting that you'll have certain people who are drawn to certain things, like, you know, me with all my kind of maritime collection and everything, and I know that obviously a lot of my family were at sea. Now I haven't been at sea, but all of that history has, and you wonder whether there's something there that just gets passed down through you.
And you've got the
you know, like when you know, when you get somebody who's a really good football player, and they have a kid, and that kid is also a really good football player. You know, is it something that is in your genes, if you like, that is then passed down, and maybe them feelings and draw to certain things is in your genes, you know.
That's what it is. Yeah. Well, it's the same with I always think that, like, you know what you were saying then about in your genes. If you think about it, we're all learning all the time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, my granddad was on the ships.
Yeah.
And I love boats. You know, my dad loved boats. My brother loves getting out on the boat. We've got that infinite thing with boats.
Yeah, that connection.
And that could go back, you know,
from when families technology, done that. Isn't it? I mean, you look at technology now. If you went back to Victorian times and showed them a mobile phone,
they'd be blown away.
They wouldn't be. They'd be like, what? You know, they wouldn't be able to believe it. So you know, the question you've got to ask is, you know, in 1,000 years, are we even? You know, the life I think the way we are will be completely different.
We'd be like the Victorians to us.
You know,
because I always think that. You know, I think cars will be hovering.
I think they will be. Yeah.
You've already got drones.
Right with all the potholes, wouldn't they? You know?
Yeah. You've got the drones.
Yeah.
You know, there's your next thing. You've got, is it China now who's started taxi drones?
But could you imagine though if it came to a point where they could actually figure out what your consciousness was, you know, be all the neuronic pathway, you know, the neural pathways in your brain, and your actual consciousness, And it got to a point where society was that advanced that could be transferred to like a virtual infinite world. And you would live forever then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But you'd technically would you still be a ghost?
Well, yeah. But we were talking, we're coming towards the end of the show now,
Yeah.
James, about 5 minutes left. If you think about your mind,
Yeah.
right, where is it? Where's your mind?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because is it in your head, or are you connected to something?
Connected
your
to
mind?
something else that you
Like a computer?
Yeah.
Because
You're almost like a radio picking up a signal.
when you're thinking, and it's very hard to explain, is when you're thinking in your head,
Yeah.
you're talking in your head, you're talking to yourself in your head.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can think, I'll look at the boat. In my head, I've just gone, look at the boat. So I looked at the boat. Where's that thinking coming from? Okay,
Yeah.
it's your brain. And
And you know what the even maddest thing is? You was always going to think that.
Yeah.
Like, I was always going to...
Yeah.
Now, when you actually think about it that way, I always was.
Yeah.
Because, obviously, it was my free will to do it.
Yeah.
But I was always going to do it whichever way I've done it. So
Mm.
actually, when you think about that, everything that we do, yeah, we feel like we're making a choice. But we were always going to do it, because whichever way we make it...
So, in your mind...
We've gone to a metaphysical bit there now.
In your mind, right?
Yeah.
You've got thoughts.
Hmm.
You can picture things. You can picture... My mum and dad have passed away, but I can picture them in my head. I can see the face and everything else. So, when people say, I'm seeing so-and-so in my head, why aren't we believing them? Because they may be seeing them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We'll never understand our mind.
Yeah.
Well, we won't anyway.
No, not at all. And I think the thing is, you know, when we've said this before, we've worked with some really great psychics and mediums who are really accurate and stuff. And, you know, and I've also met some who haven't been, you know, are very, very vague and demonstratively cold reading. But, you know, we've had people who we've met before, you know, who've been investigation with us, like David Trainer, who we know well, and he's done investigation with us. Absolutely fantastic. I've had readings off him, amazing readings, and he's lovely and really nice, you know, really nice person and dedicated. But I've had it with him where he's give descriptions for people, and he doesn't know them at all, you know, and that's what is mesmerising, because he sees, I'm seeing this person who's got this, and this. And that's not a generic thing, it's a very specific thing.
It's a skill.
So there's definitely some people definitely do have them gifts, don't they? I think.
James, do you know what, we've talked that much, it's come towards the end of the show now. We've got to do this again, because I really enjoyed this chat. This is what it's about.
It is indeed.
So from Access Paranormal and from James Anthony, we'll see you again very soon. Good night.
Good night.